Open the camera app on your iPhone and take a portrait. Take the same portrait of the same person on someone else's iPhone 15 feet away. The two photos will look identical. The same skin tone, the same shadow blue, the same gentle face smoothing, the same exposure compensation in the corner where backlight is hitting the subject. People assume photos are about the camera. People assume the camera lens, the sensor, and the shutter capture what is genuinely in front of them. Neither of those things is true on an iPhone in 2026. The iPhone is not photographing the scene. It is generating a photo that matches what Apple in Cupertino has decided photos should look like. Here on the reason why. When you press the shutter on an iPhone, you assume light enters the lens, hits a sensor, and the sensor records what it saw. The phone saves a JPEG of that recording. None of that is what actually happens. When you press the shutter, the iPhone has already been running the camera for 3 seconds, capturing 9 exposures at different brightness levels. The phone selects the best frames and merges them. Then a neural processing unit, called the Apple Neural Engine, examines the image, identifies what is in it, and applies different corrections to different parts. Skin gets one correction, sky gets another. Foliage gets a third. The iPhone does not save what the sensor saw. Here is the pipeline. Apple markets it under names you have seen, but never questioned. Smart HDR Deep Fusion, Photonic Engine. Each is a distinct stage in the iPhone's image chain. Smart HDR merges the bracketed exposures, balances dynamic range, and performs the first pass of editorial decisions about what is bright and what is dark. Deep Fusion analyzes individual pixels to enhance texture and reduce noise. The Photonic Engine, introduced in 2022, applies neural network color and tone corrections at the raw sensor level before demosaic. None of these are optional settings. There is no off switch. The pipeline runs every time the camera fires. The JPEG you receive has been editorially shaped before you see it. Here is the secret. The decisions inside that pipeline are made by a single team. The team is the camera and photography software group at Apple Park, about 200 people. They do not capture light. They do not design lenses. They write the algorithms that decide what skin, shadows, fabric, and sky should look like. Their decisions are deployed in a single iOS update to every iPhone shipped that year and to every existing iPhone that updates immediately. The aesthetic changes overnight, globally, all at once. 2 billion iPhones run their 2026 aesthetic right now. 200 people in one building decided what every iPhone photo should look like. Here's where it gets stranger. The aesthetic that teams settled on in 2026 has identifiable features. Skin tones warm toward yellow. Shadows get a cool blue cast that does not exist in real lighting. Highlights get rolled off the way film used to roll them off. Greens in foliage get pulled toward a particular cinematic teal. Reds get desaturated. The combined effect is an image that looks, to most viewers, less like reality and more like a movie still. A class action lawsuit filed in 2024 alleges the warming and blue shadow alter how non-white skin tones render. Apple denies. The pipeline has not changed. Here's what most owners do not know. There is no setting in the camera app to turn the pipeline off. Even Apple Pro RAW, advertised as raw capture, runs a reduced version of the pipeline. The actual raw buyer data is never accessible from the camera app. The only way to get unprocessed images is through a developer API used in third-party apps like Halide, which most users do not use. The default state of the iPhone is to apply the pipeline. The user who wants reality, not Apple's interpretation, must work around the operating system. Apple has decided what counts as a default photo. That decision rides along with every iPhone sold. Here is what is not just iPhone. Every smartphone runs its own pipeline, and each has its own aesthetic. Samsung Galaxy phones produce images with sharper edges, more saturated colors, especially in greens and oranges, and aggressive face brightening. Google Pixel phones produce images with more neutral colors, deeper shadows, and less skin smoothing. Huawei phones, before the US export ban, produced images optimized for the Chinese market with stronger contrast and warmer skin. Each manufacturer has its own 200-person team in its own building, making the same kind of editorial decisions Apple's team makes. The phone you bought mostly picked your photographic aesthetic for you. The brand decision is the aesthetic decision. They are not separable. So what is an iPhone photo actually? It is not a photograph in the traditional sense. It is the output of a software pipeline, designed in Cupertino, applied to a fused stack of sensor exposures taken before you press the shutter, processed by a neural network, and saved as a file. The file looks like a photo. The metadata describes it as a photo. Your phone calls it a photo. But the chain from light to file is a chain of decisions made by people you have never met, optimizing for the aesthetic Apple chose as the iPhone look. Every photo you have ever taken on an iPhone is downstream of those decisions. Notice what this means about almost every photo you have on your iPhone right now. The skin tones, the shadows, the highlights, the colors, the texture of every single image were not captured. They were generated. The sensor produced raw data. The neural pipeline shaped that data into the file you saved. The aesthetic the file conforms to was decided in Cupertino by a team of about 200 people, against criteria that change a few times per year and that no user has any way to opt out of. The iPhone you carry in your pocket, despite being marketed as a camera, despite having a hardware lens and a hardware sensor and a hardware shutter button, is not really a camera in the way the word has historically meant. It is a small, specialized image generation device that uses a sensor as one of many inputs, your tap on the shutter as another, and a neural network's editorially preferences as the largest one. The output is a Cupertino opinion, rendered as a JPEG, indexed by date in your photo library. The next time you scroll through your iPhone photos and notice that everything looks somehow consistent, somehow on brand, somehow like an iPhone photo, you are not noticing your own taste. You are noticing a small team's decision about what photos should look like in 2026. If this kind of small team quietly deciding the rules of modern life story is your speed, there's a whole channel of stories like this one. The reasons behind everyday objects you've stopped questioning. Subscribe so the next one finds you and quietly lands in your feed and arrives in your feed without you having to look for it once or remember to check.